While I am too small of a YouTuber for FromSoft to call for the early access of Nightreign, I have read every article, watched almost every video and read all the interviews of the director of Nightreign to compile all the things that I have learned from the day gameplay, the loot system, what you lose and what you don't when you die, the concept of Murk, the concept of Relics, how weapons are even more crucial than the base game, all the heroes and their powers, and finally, what bosses to expect in this multiverse of FromSoft madness, and details which I'm almost certain are gonna blow your mind. So let's begin. Firstly though, I want to discuss the least talked subject, and I found it fascinating. It's how the game plays during the day, not the bosses, not the day and night cycle, but the general how the day gameplay is different from the base Elden Ring game, and that's something all players will have to adapt quickly if they want to succeed in Elden Ring Nightreign. So let's go through that. When you first boot up the game, you'll find yourself at a familiar place, at the round table hold, where you need to choose your archetype, but unlike the base game and the extensive builder template, you have 8 heroes to choose from. And from everything what I've heard, I think we have a pretty good idea on all the different heroes and their powers, which we will discuss a little later. For now, choose your character and that will drop you Fortnite style into an alternate reality of Limgrave. So when you and your other 2 team members land like this on a bird, you have exactly 15 minutes to get as powerful as you can. So you can either do this together as a team, which I would suggest against, as you will have those pesky team members who will run to steal loot. So I suggest you split up, cause that way you'll have more variety of loot. So now imagine you're split up. You'll find yourself exploring dungeons, forts, wizard towers and ruins, and there is something called the environmental modifier which will appear on the map, such as a swamp or a lava spewing volcano, which tells me the entire map will have a life of its own and can randomly change things up, which apparently is tied to the story of the different heroes, which is something I'm still confused about. And you will have all these places to explore for treasure chest as well as other loot. Now loot in this game is different from the base game. The loot rarity or how good the loot is color coded, like a Diablo 4 or recently Path of Exile 2. So a common item might be white coded, a rare blue coded and a legendary yellow coded maybe. So the whole emphasis of this system is for you to quickly choose you want it or you don't want it and just move on. So the color coding helps you decide faster. Now what you're looking for in these chests and what items you should pick needs a different section, which is a whole lot to talk about, so that comes a little later in this video. Now in these dungeons there are some mini bosses as well which drop better, bigger loot, but they are a whole lot harder to kill, so you can either fight it or just ignore. Like in one of the playthrough of PC Gamer, Margit the Fell Omen randomly fell on the map. So yeah, you can expect a lot of random things happening in your playthrough. Now if you do end up fighting and dying to say a Margit the Fell Omen, what happens next? Well, nothing. Every time you die during a day, you respawn, but with no runes and 1 level down. So you cannot per se die during the day, but what you can do is run faster, much faster, and you can climb walls like you could do in Sekiro. Talking of death, if you do end up dying at night, you lose everything except for one thing, one currency, Murk. You can use this Murk to buy emotes, skins, and most importantly, relics, and you can slot 3 relics. Now these relics has my attention cause it can literally change how you play. For example, there's a relic which buffs a certain kind of weapon, so in your next playthrough you can actually look for a weapon for which you have a buff. Or there's a relic which gives +2 to vigor, and Flask heals your allies as well in addition to yourself. One relic made critical hits earn more runes, which is interesting as then you'd want a weapon that does critical hits, right? So you see how these things force you to change your playthrough? Fascinating. And I've also heard of one more relic that lets you see all the treasure on the map, which can be super useful, especially if you can see the color coding as well. You have 15 minutes, so you want the best loot fast. Heroes, let's talk about them heroes, and we're gonna talk about all 8 of them and what abilities they have. Now, each hero is defined by three abilities. First is the passive trait, second is the unique ability that you need to activate, and finally the ultimate attack. And for each hero, I'm going to break down all of their abilities. Wilder. This is the armored knight, the knight in shining armor, the go-to character for most Souls game players, equipped with a hefty longsword. The Wilder is more agile than you would expect, so this is the perfect all-rounder between attack power and attack speed. I would assume you would go for a hybrid build for this one between Dex and Strength. Now, let's talk ability. One ability is the hook step, and it's not a dance step. Mortal Kombat fans would find it quite fascinating. Yeah, that's exactly what it does. However, I'm not sure how that's gonna work against the bigger bosses when night falls. And for the ultimate ability, it can charge up for an explosive attack, and the more you hold on, the more is its attack power to damage those tanky bosses. Talking of tank, let's talk Guardian. This is the second boss in the roster and the tank of your team, and will be right at the thick of things to take in most of the damage the bosses throw at you. So the ideal way to play him would be to use a hefty weapon and a shield to take in all that incoming damage. And if you think about it, it's the perfect support character as it can revive some of your high hitting but squishy teammates. Coming to its ability, it creates a whirlwind of sorts. It's a ranged AoE whirlwind, so it's something you can target from distance. And for its ultimate, yeah, this is really cool. It's called the Wings of Salvation. The Guardian flies up in the sky before performing a dive bomb onto the ground, dealing AoE damage and also raises defense of nearby allies. Now, remember I told you this being a support and can revive your allies? Well, the way you revive your allies in this game is by hitting them. Now imagine you see your friends dead in an area. You can simply dive bomb and revive them both at one go. Next up, the Duchess. Now this is one of my favorite characters cause this character can do something that can only be done in my all-time favorite game. That's Bloodborne. Sidestep. And your weapon of choice? The dagger. So what about her powers? She has this ability to re-deal all the damage done by her and her allies in the last few seconds. So basically you do double damage. Imagine you all do your special moves dealing all that damage and the Duchess gets to redo all of that damage in one shot. Insane power. And her ultimate ability cloaks all nearby allies, allowing you for a quick getaway. Or a better way to use it, in my opinion, would be to give your allies enough time to end the cooldown of their ability so that they can deal massive damage, and you can simply double that by using the ability we just spoke about earlier. Next hero, Recluse, which is basically a mage and truth be told reminds me a lot of Rani the Witch. And the Recluse has a passive which lets her absorb mana from her enemies. FP, right? Yeah, that's what it's called. Her ability is called Magic Cocktail, and as the name suggests, it needs a cocktail of three attributes, say fire, ice or poison to get activated, and she collects these attributes when your allies hit them with that attribute. Say your ally has bleed and hits the enemy with it. You store that and once you have 3, it unleashes a deadly attack on the foe. And what kind of attack you do depends on the attribute you collected. I'm really excited to see what this power can do. And the ultimate, that's called Blood Souls, which lets you mark all your nearby enemies, and when your allies damage your enemy, they regain health. Does that remind you of someone?
Heed my words. I am Melania, Blade of Mikola. And I have never known defeat.
Now the rest 4 are not clearly known, but by the interviews that I have read and the trailer, we can guess quite accurately what they are. So the 5th one, Archer. And if I had to draw parallels, this would be the Hawkeye of Avengers. And if I were to guess one of its powers, I would say it would be like one of the powers of the Archer in Dragon Dogma 2, which is the Heavenly Shot, where you wind down and let go of the arrow with devastating power. And I think you can even see that in this shot. Second thing which I found fascinating was how the archer is the only one shown in footage to be able to summon a spectral hawk. And that could be its passive ability, which helps you navigate the map faster and get loot quickly. Next, we have a hero which is my favorite among all 8, and that's a Sekiro styled hero. And I can bet my last dollar he's gonna rock a katana style weapon with a deflect system, and if you deflect just right, you can counterattack your foe. Now, if I had to second guess its power, I would say every time you deflect, you keep adding your attack power, and when your enemy is finally staggered, you can hit him back with all that gathered attack power in one blow. This has to be the most exciting of all the heroes. The last 2 heroes we have no clue about, so we are simply gonna guess, but a calculated guess. One being this big guy, and he reminds me a lot of Radan, not only because of the whole color scheme that's purple, which mostly signified gravity attack in the base game, but also how it looks like he's gravity pulling rocks, similar to Meteor Summon. And finally, the last, but definitely not the least. And well, yeah, I just don't know. But I read this somewhere that this boss will be similar to Renella's power of summoning different spirit ashes, but not one, but you'll have the power to summon different ones, which would be really cool to see in a battlefield. And the fact that there are no healers in this game, this I think is that hero, and its ultimate power is to heal allies, nearby allies. Now, we have 2 more very important topics to cover, the weapons and the bosses we can expect when night falls. But first, I want to talk about them weapons, because weapons in this game I think are going to be even more important than the base game. So, each hand has 3 slots, so in total 6 slots, and even though you are wielding one weapon as your primary one, the buff or negation powers of the other weapons will also apply to you. Yep, that's right. So choosing your weapon is so important, and this, in my opinion, is a game changer which will make us keep coming back and trying out different and new builds. And when you couple that with the fact that there is no weight limit, you can carry any 6 weapon you want. And don't forget, you have relics too. So if you have a relic that adds damage buff to your strength weapon, and say you're an archer, you can simply keep that strength weapon in your arsenal to have extra damage on your arrows. How insane does that sound? Now, I have been dying to talk to you guys about bosses, and what to expect actually ties in with my YouTube channel name, Soulsverse, cause this is nothing short of a multiverse of sort from FromSoft games, and we already saw a hint of that with the Dark Souls property Nameless King in the trailer, and with the post from Dark Souls on Nightreign, we have a lot more coming. In the trailer, we see the Centipede Demon. Now, the Centipede Demon is a boss from the first Dark Souls game that guards the path of Lost Izalith. This boss has its sweeping attacks made with arms that are their own independent centipedes. Yeah, so they can cause real damage. The Duke's Dear Freya. This giant 2-headed spider appeared in Dark Souls 2 as one of its early game major bosses. Now, Freya is a tough fight because the majority of its body is invulnerable and you can only deal damage by attacking either of its head. Now, this is important knowledge. I hope this helps when you play Elden Ring Nightreign, and if it does, let me know in the comments. The Nameless King. Now this boss needs no introduction. The Nameless King is the penultimate challenge in Dark Souls 3's base game. This boss is a test of timing and patience, and many players likely won't stumble across it without a guide. So yeah, he's gonna be quite a challenge in Nightreign. Then there is this one. We all know her. We all had a crush on her. The Firekeeper of Dark Souls 3 returns. How I know that, you ask? Check out this mask. Yup, she's definitely the Firekeeper. So on that beautiful note, that about does it for this one. Now I wanna hear from you. Comment below and let me know. And I'll be releasing my second video on Nightreign discussing all the different bosses from Dark Souls I wanna see make a comeback in Elden Ring Nightreign. So if that sounds interesting to you, a like and a sub would be simply lovely.